Laura and Michael seemed like the perfect couple, but behind closed doors, a chilling secret was unfolding. When Michael vanished without a trace, the investigation uncovered a shocking truth that would expose Laura as a killer hiding in plain sight. Laura and Michael's life together seemed like a storybook marriage, the kind that friends envied and neighbors admired. Their suburban home was immaculate, with flowers neatly lining the walkway and a freshly painted porch that gleamed under the morning sun. Every corner of their house told a story of apparent happiness, family photos smiling down from the walls, shelves stacked with books and mementos from vacations, and a kitchen always stocked with the latest gadgets. Michael worked as a financial advisor, known for his sharp mind and meticulous attention to detail, while Laura managed a small home-based business that gave her flexibility and freedom. On the surface, everything appeared perfect. Friends would describe Laura as charming and composed, someone who could light up a room with her smile, while Michael was polite, attentive, and patient. To outsiders, their life seemed like a balance of love, stability, and routine. Yet beneath this seemingly flawless exterior, tension had been slowly building. Small cracks had begun to appear in their relationship, invisible at first to anyone outside the home. Michael started noticing that money was missing from their joint accounts, small amounts at first, then larger sums that didn't make sense. Laura would brush off his questions, claiming she needed it for work or personal errands. Arguments became more frequent, though subtle, and often ended in silence rather than resolution. Michael found himself walking on eggshells, unsure of what would set Laura off. At the same time, Laura's behavior began to change in ways no one could explain. She spent hours on her phone late at night, sometimes in the garage, sometimes in her bedroom, and always with the door closed. She made excuses when neighbors or friends asked about her routine. Slowly, whispers started circulating among close friends. Had something shifted in the marriage, and if so, what was happening behind closed doors? The neighborhood, once a place of warmth and community, started to feel heavy with suspicion. Michael's family noticed his increasingly restless demeanor. Friends remarked that he was quieter at gatherings, distracted, and no longer the lively man they had known. Laura, on the other hand, maintained her perfect public image, attending events, smiling for photos, and engaging in polite conversation. It was as though she was performing a carefully scripted role, one that hid her private actions and intentions from everyone. Michael, sensing that something was wrong, attempted to confront Laura, but every discussion ended with vague reassurances or anger, leaving him more anxious and confused. As autumn arrived, the tension escalated. The once cozy home felt colder, the quiet dinners increasingly uncomfortable. Michael began keeping track of financial statements, noticing patterns that hinted at something more than carelessness. Meanwhile, Laura's charm remained intact in public, but small inconsistencies in her stories and routines did not go unnoticed by neighbors who prided themselves on paying attention. It was in this environment of growing mistrust, hidden secrets, and silent arguments that the stage was set for something tragic. No one outside the home could have predicted how quickly the cracks would widen or how far the darkness lurking beneath the surface would extend. The perfect marriage, admired by so many, was quietly unraveling, setting in motion events that would shock everyone who thought they knew Laura and Michael. Michael's disappearance began like a faint ripple in what everyone believed was a calm pond, but it quickly turned into a wave of alarm and suspicion. One chilly autumn morning, he didn't show up for work. His colleagues, used to his punctuality and reliability, initially assumed he was running late. Calls to his phone went unanswered, and emails went unopened. By noon, worry had started to seep in, and a coworker decided to call Michael's home. Laura answered with a practiced calmness, explaining that he had left early for an appointment and would be back soon. The explanation seemed plausible, and for a brief moment, colleagues let their concerns subside. But as hours passed with no sign of Michael, unease turned into panic. By evening, his family was growing frantic. His siblings drove to the house only to find it quiet, eerily so. The kitchen lights were off, and the front door was locked from the inside. Laura insisted that Michael had simply gone for a long walk to clear his head, a story that some found convincing and others found suspicious. Friends who visited later that week noticed subtle signs that something was wrong. Michael S. car still in the driveway, his briefcase untouched on the desk, and his coat hanging on the rack. Small details, once insignificant, now appeared to point towards something more sinister. Initially, police treated the case as a standard missing person report. They asked Laura for any clues, including his recent habits, phone activity, and social interactions. She provided answers, but inconsistencies began to emerge. Some of her explanations conflicted with statements from neighbors, and her timeline of Michael's last movements was vague at best. Detectives noted her demeanor. She seemed calm, almost too composed, a stark contrast to the anxiety one might expect from someone whose spouse had vanished. Meanwhile, investigators interviewed neighbors who reported hearing unusual noises coming from the house the night before Michael disappeared. Some described thuds and what sounded like furniture being moved. Others mentioned seeing Laura leave the house late at night in a hurry, carrying items that seemed heavy. These observations, combined with the growing evidence of financial irregularities and secretive behavior, prompted authorities to suspect that Michael's disappearance might not have been voluntary. Adding to the mystery was the fact that Michael had an important meeting scheduled with his lawyer the very next day, a meeting that could have revealed key information about the couple's finances and personal disputes. The meeting never took place, and police began to theorize that whoever was involved in Michael E.'s disappearance had acted with careful timing, ensuring he would never arrive. The case, initially considered routine, shifted dramatically as officers pieced together the fragments of a puzzle: a missing husband, a seemingly grieving wife, and a growing trail of evidence that suggested foul play. As days turned into a tense week, public concern grew. Friends and family held vigils, hoping for a safe return, while authorities worked tirelessly to follow every lead. Laura maintained her public image flawlessly, attending gatherings, speaking politely to neighbors, and expressing concern for Michael. Yet behind the closed doors of their home, her calculated behavior told a different story. For detectives, every contradiction, every omission, and every strange behavior was a clue pointing toward a dark reality. Michael A.'s disappearance was no accident, and the answers lay closer to home than anyone had imagined. Detectives intensified their investigation, determined to uncover the truth behind Michael's sudden disappearance. They began by examining the couple's home in meticulous detail. Every room, every drawer, and every closet became a potential clue. Initially, the house appeared undisturbed, almost staged in its normalcy. But subtle irregularities started to emerge. Furniture had been slightly shifted, small items were missing, and a faint chemical odor lingered in certain corners. These observations hinted at a struggle or some attempt to clean up evidence. Investigators also reviewed Michael's digital footprint, including emails, bank statements, and phone records. Patterns emerged that deepened their suspicions. Large sums of money had been withdrawn without Michael's knowledge, and several encrypted messages on Laura's phone suggested secret communications she had kept hidden from him. Neighbors became an unexpected source of critical information. A few had installed security cameras, and footage from one system revealed Laura carrying large, heavy bags to her car late at night. Bags that appeared to contain something more than household items. Investigators traced the route she took and discovered it led to a remote area outside town, a location without obvious ties to her daily life. This discovery prompted them to broaden their search and consider that the missing husband might be closer than anyone had suspected. Throughout the investigation, Laura continued to maintain her public persona. She attended memorial-like gatherings, expressed concern for Michael's well-being, and even coordinated with friends to search the local area. Her ability to appear composed in public contrasted sharply with the growing body of evidence against her, raising questions about her psychological state and capacity for deceit. Detectives began to consider the possibility that she had been planning this disappearance for some time, carefully orchestrating every move to avoid immediate suspicion. The turning point came when police discovered inconsistencies in Laura's statements to investigators. She initially claimed to have no knowledge of Michael's whereabouts after he left home that fateful night. Yet receipts, cell tower data, and witness accounts contradicted her story. Small details, like a receipt for a storage unit in a nearby town and a neighbor's observation of her driving late at night with what appeared to be heavy, irregularly shaped items, created a timeline that increasingly implicated her. Investigators realized they were no longer dealing with a missing person case. They were facing a calculated act of deception and possible murder. The tension within the investigation escalated as law enforcement worked tirelessly to locate the storage unit and confirm its contents. Every lead was followed meticulously, and forensics teams began preparing to uncover potential evidence of a crime. The combination of physical proof, digital records, and eyewitness testimony painted a chilling picture. Laura was no longer just a person of interest. She was the central figure in what appeared to be a premeditated crime. Detectives had to act quickly, aware that any delay could risk the destruction of vital evidence or even the permanent disappearance of Michael. By the end of this phase of the investigation, the narrative had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a concerned search for a missing husband had evolved into a high-stakes hunt for truth, exposing layers of deceit, financial manipulation, and calculated behavior. The detectives knew that the next discovery could change everything, bringing them face to face with the shocking reality of Laura's actions and the tragic fate of Michael. Following the breakthrough in the investigation, detectives moved swiftly to act on the evidence they had painstakingly gathered. Every detail pointed to a single chilling possibility. Michael's disappearance was not a matter of him leaving on his own accord. With search warrants in hand, police focused on the storage unit that had appeared in Laura's hidden transactions. Located on the outskirts of town in an abandoned industrial area, the unit seemed unremarkable from the outside, yet investigators approached with the understanding that the contents inside could reveal the darkest truth of the case. Inside the storage unit, the scene was both calculated and horrifying. Officers discovered layers of plastic and tarps, which, when carefully removed, revealed Michael's body. He had been restrained and hidden in a way that indicated careful planning, yet the hurried execution left traces that forensic teams could analyze. Evidence showed attempts to obscure the timeline of his death, including chemical treatments and concealment, but small details betrayed the meticulous facade. Fingerprints, partially torn receipts, and subtle marks on the tarps provided direct links to Laura. Detectives recognized that this was no spontaneous act. It had been premeditated, planned with precision to avoid detection, and executed by someone intimately familiar with Michael's routines. As forensic teams worked, the investigators reconstructed the sequence of events leading up to Michael's death. Financial records indicated mounting tension over stolen funds and hidden transactions. Cell phone logs, combined with witness accounts, suggested Laura had orchestrated Michael's isolation and ensured that no one would interfere. Investigators pieced together her movements, revealing how she transported him under the guise of routine errands and meetings, ultimately leading to his confinement in the storage unit. Every element of the crime, timing, location, concealment, spoke to an alarming degree of calculation and cold intent. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community. Friends and family, who had held hope that Michael might simply have left to escape marital tension, were confronted with a grim reality. The vibrant, intelligent man they knew had been taken from them in an act of deliberate violence by the person they had trusted most. Media coverage intensified, bringing national attention to the case. Investigators faced not only the procedural challenges of collecting evidence, but also the psychological weight of understanding the depths of deception and betrayal involved. The physical evidence, combined with Laura's prior inconsistencies and the mounting digital footprint, formed an undeniable case. Police were able to tie her directly to the storage unit through surveillance footage, transaction records, and forensic analysis. Her public composure began to unravel as the net closed around her, revealing a chilling portrait of manipulation and premeditation. What had been a seemingly perfect marriage, admired and envied, was now exposed as the setting for a methodical crime. The truth, once hidden, was finally coming to light in stark and undeniable detail. With Michael's body recovered, the investigation entered its final phase. Authorities were now able to build a timeline, connect all the dots, and prepare a case strong enough for prosecution. The horrifying reality of Laura's actions would soon be revealed to the world, exposing the depths of her betrayal and the tragic consequences of a life built on deception. For the detectives, the discovery marked a grim milestone, a point where suspicion turned into undeniable proof, and the chilling truth about a killer wife was fully unveiled. The arrest of Laura sent shockwaves through the community. The woman who had once appeared flawless, composed and grieving, was now facing the most serious charges imaginable. News of Michael's body being discovered in the storage unit dominated local and national headlines. For family, friends, and neighbors, the revelation was almost impossible to process. Laura had maintained a carefully crafted image of a loving wife, and to realize that she had orchestrated such a heinous act shattered their perception of everything they thought they knew. The community struggled to reconcile the woman they had admired with the person now accused of murder. As the legal process began, prosecutors meticulously presented the evidence that had been gathered over weeks of investigation. Security footage, financial records, witness statements, and forensic analysis all painted a damning picture. Every detail of Laura's calculated actions was laid bare. The late-night trips with heavy bags, the withdrawals of large sums of money, the encrypted messages, and the manipulation of those around her to maintain her facade. The prosecution argued that Laura had acted with premeditation, luring Michael into a false sense of security before carrying out her plan. The defense attempted to portray her as a grieving wife overwhelmed by marital strife, but the evidence of her planning and deception proved too overwhelming to counter. Throughout the trial, the courtroom was tense. Family members of Michael sat in quiet anguish, listening as each piece of evidence was presented. The prosecution detailed how Laura had meticulously plotted the disappearance, ensured that Michael could not reach his lawyer, and ultimately concealed his body. Experts testified about the psychological manipulation and calculated nature of her actions, emphasizing that this was not a crime of passion, but a deliberate act of betrayal and violence. Witnesses described Laura's strange behavior in the days following Michael's disappearance, painting a picture of someone who maintained a public image while hiding her true intentions. As the trial progressed, Laura's carefully maintained composure began to crack. The weight of the evidence and the relentless questioning exposed inconsistencies in her statements. Her attempts to manipulate perception in her favor failed under scrutiny. It became clear to the jury that the woman who had presented herself as grieving was in fact the architect of Michael's death. Months of investigation, combined with precise legal work, culminated in a verdict that many saw as inevitable. Laura was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The aftermath of the trial left an indelible mark on everyone involved. Michael's family finally received answers, though their grief remained profound. Neighbors and friends were forced to grapple with the disturbing realization that appearances can be deceiving and that trust can be exploited by those closest to us. The story of Laura and Michael served as a chilling cautionary tale about deception, premeditation, and the darkness that can exist behind the walls of a seemingly perfect home. While justice had been served in the courtroom, the emotional scars and the haunting memory of Michael S. fate remained a stark reminder of the tragic consequences of betrayal and the terrifying reality of a killer hiding in plain sight.